Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Beasley. Now, good teachers, or let me rephrase that, great teachers are always trying to motivate their students and think of new ways to make their instructional content culturally relevant, meaningful, and make their classes a lot more inclusive. And this can all be done by understanding and addressing funds of knowledge and asset-based instruction. Now, these are not new concepts, but they have been kind of reintroduced or re-emphasized and gained some focus in education just as another way to improve the quality of instructional content by connecting it to the knowledge and experiences learned at home or outside the typical school setting from students. So today I'll discuss funds of knowledge and asset-based instruction. I'll talk about what they are, why they're important, and also how K through 12 teachers can develop lessons and activities and approach curriculum and instruction with these in mind. The concept known as funds of knowledge actually originated sometime in the early 1980s, and it was developed to address what was known as deficit thinking in education. And deficit thinking is this idea that students, especially minority students or those from low-income families or identified as underrepresented communities, perform poorly in school because of their deficits, the things they don't know or are unable to do, or even the condition or community life that they have. And these students are usually blamed for low performance and are often labeled as unmotivated or uneducated. And the claim is that they don't have family support or access to certain resources. And so for a lot of teachers, the focus is usually on what these students don't have or what they don't know. In other words, their deficits. So in the 1980s, some researchers, Gonzalez, Moll, and Amonte, conducted some investigation and studied the daily lives, behaviors, and cultural practices of U.S. immigrant families. And they identified certain abilities and skills and bodies of knowledge and social and cultural ways of interacting, all which they called funds of knowledge. And although all students have some funds of knowledge, the research was specific to those that were identified as low income or identified from an underrepresented or high risk community due to how they were perceived in the classroom. So funds of knowledge includes a collection of all of those skills and abilities, the knowledge and information that has been passed down historically through generations, the knowledge gained from life experiences, traditions, social skills, practices, information learned through family, community, and even cultural experiences. Funds of knowledge can include things like how to repair a car. It could be changing a tire or changing the oil in the car. It could be cooking or understanding how to follow a recipe or even understanding the measurements of ingredients that goes into a recipe. It could be knowing how to sew, caring for a younger sibling, language used and other ways of communicating, or even things like yard work, maintaining a garden, or even money management. So all kinds of knowledge, skills, and abilities that students have are part of their funds of knowledge. And although these are all things that do require a certain level of skill and knowledge and ability, they're not necessarily identified as academic or things that are expected to be effective in a traditional classroom setting. But still, they do contribute to that body of knowledge that students possess. So the study into funds of knowledge highlights the fact that education, those gaps in learning opportunities, and the delivery of instructional content can be more meaningful and more relatable to students if teachers learned about their students' cultures, the households, and everyday life, and then use that information when selecting class resources, developing curriculum, creating their instructional opportunities and the activities and lessons. And this is where funds of knowledge and asset-based instruction connect. Asset-based instruction is rooted in understanding funds of knowledge. It's getting to know your students, focusing on their skills and their strengths and building instruction around those strengths. Asset-based instruction is also known as strength-based teaching, because it is focused on students' strengths, the things that they do know and are capable of doing, not their weaknesses. Student assets can be broken down into 4 different areas. Number 1, diversity in thinking. This is recognizing that there are different ways in thinking about something. Students can be critical thinkers, creative, holistic, detailed, focused, or even deductive thinkers. Number 2, culture, which includes backgrounds, ethnicity, race, language, socioeconomic status, immigration status, and even gender identity. Number three, traits or characteristics. And this includes things like temperament, being an introvert or an extrovert, social and emotional strengths, the ability to work together, creativity, or even leadership abilities. Number four, intelligence type, which includes musical rhythmic, visual spatial, verbal linguistic, logical, mathematical, or bodily kinesthetic. Now, true asset-based instruction is understanding all of these as they relate to each individual student. And asset-based instruction requires a change in what educators think about students and how they learn. It's a growth mindset, recognizing the positive skills and abilities and experiences that students already possess and using that information to challenge students in higher level thinking to apply that knowledge in different ways and to continue to build additional learning. Asset-based instruction highlights and focuses on those students' strengths, on what they know, what they understand, their cultural background, their family dynamics, their language skills, and all of their personal and educational experiences. All of these things are seen as assets or positive strengths and knowledge that students have. And your instruction should be developed and delivered with all of these things in mind. It's focused on what students can do rather than what they can't do. So understanding and applying funds of knowledge and asset-based instruction are key to addressing, dare I say, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom. So where does the educator start? How can teachers begin to provide this asset-based instruction and take into consideration funds of knowledge when they create their lessons? Well, the first step is always getting to know your students. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. You can have students write essays or create projects about their backgrounds or their interest or culture. You can have students complete reflective journals or even other class assignments, use questionnaires, parent conferences, home visits, or talking to previous teachers, or here's an idea, actually talking to your students. Usually with the busyness of everything that teachers need to do, from planning their lessons to focusing on standards and benchmarks, making sure that they're addressing the TPEs, developing assessments and grading assignments and classroom management issues, all of the expected teaching behaviors. With all of those, some teachers tend to neglect the importance and the effectiveness of simply talking to and listening to their students. And as you find out more information about your students, you want to document what you've learned and develop this list of skills and interests and abilities that they have. And this is what's called a funds of knowledge inventory matrix. And this is simply a chart that you create that includes a list of categories that represent your students' interests, their skills, or the activities that they may engage in outside of school, and how you can connect lessons and class activities to those interests and skills. Now, of course, you can't develop this overnight. This is something that is designed to take some time to complete and should be continually developed as you learn more about your students, their families, and their interests. And the matrix is a good way to document and remember what your students are actually interested in and identify those strengths or those assets. And it can look something like this. Create a document or a chart and just make 3 category headings. Number 1 for assets and funds of knowledge. Number 2 for home use and practice. And number 3 for instructional connection. So in the column for assets or funds of knowledge, you'll state exactly what that is. And this can be an area that the student has shown some interest in or has some skill or some experience in. And you can include all kinds of things here: politics, technology, language, religion, sports, cooking, entertainment, health. Whenever you find an area of interest from one of your students, you want to log it. You want to write it down. And then you want to identify or explain how the student demonstrates knowledge or skill in that area, in that home community section, or other way of using this information outside the classroom. So describe the student's experience or practice within that area. And then lastly, document some different instructional approaches, identifying the classroom applications, strategies, methods, resources, or other activities that you can use. And you want to be specific and list ways that you can connect your lesson or your activities used to that asset, to that strength or that fund of knowledge. For example, you might notice that one of your students is proficient in using computers. You might hear them talking about using computers a lot, playing games, using them at home. You might notice that they're always playing on a computer in the classroom. You might talk to them, talk to their parents a little bit more, find out that they're pretty tech savvy overall. It may be things like just gaming, designing, maybe learning coding, creating something, anything. Just document it and be specific. So your matrix category would be technology. And so in the home use or practice area, you may say something like the student is proficient in computer use, family has several computers at home, there's a smart TV in every room, there's access and familiarity to different types of software and programs. The student seems to enjoy simulation type computer games, just something to help you understand how this area can be seen as a strength. And now just a quick note, you can and you should also document knowledge or experience using low or mid tech. Technology is not just computer use, and so you want to make a note of that as well. And then after this, you can brainstorm classroom applications or ways to connect this interest and this experience of technology or computers to your lessons. And you can say something like, use computer-based programs during your lessons, or consider computer learning games, or maybe even gamifying your lessons. Allow students to type assignments or research topics on the computer, or even allow students to use computers to create presentations. Just list all of the ideas you can think of, and then you'll continue completing this matrix, filling in more information as you get to know more about your students. And the idea is to develop an extensive list that represents the funds of knowledge and assets or strengths of all of your students. That way, you have a resource of information and examples to use when you're developing your lessons. And when you're planning your instruction, you can easily address funds of knowledge and develop an asset-based approach to instruction, which makes your content a lot more relatable, more interesting, or more familiar. And it motivates your students to be more engaged and makes your instruction a whole lot more inclusive. So now, hopefully, you know a little bit more about funds of knowledge and asset-based instruction, what they are, why they're important, and how to address these in the planning of your lessons and within your instruction.